What's good, you guys? Your boy Ben Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. We are halfway through 2023. Hope you guys been enjoying this year thus far. Hope you guys are getting ready for summer to begin. I know it's going to get real crazy this summer, so spend time with much time with your families as possible, and also stay safe out there. But I know this video was kind of a little bit overdue because I've been busy with work and everything else. But I wanted to come on here to try to explain my personal thoughts on Carmelo Anthony. And as many of you already know at this point, Carmelo Anthony confirmed his retirement from the NBA back in late May after 19 seasons in the NBA. And certainly, without a doubt, one of the greatest scorers of his generation. Pretty much one of the best pure scorers in NBA history. And when you look back at that 2003 draft class, I can guarantee you you can argue that it's a top 3 draft class, or at best top 5, because I know that 84, 96, and 98, and maybe 2009 may deserve some consideration. But certainly that '03 draft class with LeBron, Wade, Bosh, and Melo, that was pretty much one of the greatest draft classes ever assembled. And their impact on basketball is just tremendous. But pretty much it was simple as this. I look at Carmelo Anthony's career as a career that, you know, was incomplete in a lot of different areas. And unfortunately, the only thing that was missing out of that great Hall of Fame resume was an NBA championship. And unfortunately, as great as he was as a player, I just didn't believe that he understood or was willing to um, adapt his game and make the necessary sacrifices to win a championship. When you talk about players that were willing to make little certain sacrifices for the greater good of the team, Michael Jordan had to do the same thing. Same with Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and Dwayne Wade to a certain extent. And you can name all the great players that have won championships. I just felt that Melo, for his great scoring ability that he had, he just wasn't the kind of guy that was willing to accept or willing to take a little bit more accountability as a star player to win championships. And it's not labeling him as a selfish player. And there have been people that have labeled him as a selfish player. I'm not going to go as far because there have been a lot of selfish players that have been way worse than him, aka Derek Coleman. But the way I look at Carmelo Anthony's career, the guy is one of the most accomplished players in NBA history. He's won 3 gold medals, 4-time Olympian, right? He was led the NBA in scoring, finished third in MVP voting in 2013, made all NBA teams 6 times, right? And pretty much this guy did everything that you could ask. And in college, when he was only a freshman at Syracuse, he led them to their only national championship in school history. Now, I'm going to put you some context into that because Carmelo Anthony obviously came out of the projects of Brooklyn, New York, and moved into Maryland during the summer of I believe it was the summer of 1999, if my memory serves me correct. But I digress. But pretty much as soon as he became a high school player, he was pretty much one of the most recruited basketball players, including the likes of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and he was pretty much a guy that was pretty much one of the best heralded players. And he committed to Syracuse immediately, but he could have decided to play for North Carolina. But there were other guys that were playing above him, and he wasn't willing to wait. And then he basically transferred to Oak Hill Academy and led them to a high school championship in 2001. When he joined Syracuse, um, he averaged 22 points a game, and he was 16th in the NCAA in scoring, and it was 4th in the Big East in terms of overall scoring. And he had one of the greatest runs in NCAA tournament history, leading the Syracuse Orangemen to their only national championship. And for Jim Boeheim, as great of a coach as he was, remember he'd been to the Final Four at least twice. He made the national championship game at least twice in both 87 and 96. In 87, Keith Smart hit the game-winning jumper to beat Syracuse as Indiana held the crown. In 1996, they had a really Cinderella run to the national championship game where they just ran into a buzzsaw in the Kentucky Wildcats. And I would suggest that for any young basketball player, go look up that 95-96 Kentucky Wildcats team. That team was loaded, loaded with NBA talent. Go look that up. But when they won their first national championship, it put Carmelo Anthony on the map in terms of a national stage. And for Jim Boeheim, he pretty much got the monkey off his back in winning the national championship. And so he had one of the greatest college runs in NCAA history, and left as a freshman to go to the NBA draft. And as many people remember, he could have been drafted as number 2. Remember, the Detroit Pistons held the number 2 pick in the trade with the Memphis / Vancouver Grizzlies for the draft rights of Otis Thorpe. But instead, they drafted Darko Milicic, and we know how his career turned out. Now, imagine if Melo could have been drafted to Detroit. Maybe we're speaking a different subject here, but I digress. When he came into the NBA, he took the NBA by storm along with LeBron James, and he helped them lead the Denver Nuggets out of their playoff drought, and helped them lead into the first round against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then his career continued to grow and grow as his time in Denver went along. But we have to remember something here. We also have to remember this fact: when Melo was going to be when Melo was seeking through his options during the summer of 06, he was training with members of the USA basketball team, guys like LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. Those 3 guys eventually became teammates in 2010 with the Miami Heat. He signed a 5-year, $80 million maximum extension deal with the Nuggets, a deal that ran to the counter of the short of 3-year deals that those players were signing so they can all test the free agency market simultaneously in the summer of 2010. And looking back on it, Melo has even admitted that it was one of the biggest regrets that he had, because think of this at this moment. Remember the big 3 of both Wade, Bosh, and LeBron. The real pitch for this big 3 in Miami was originally it was going to be Melo, Wade, and LeBron. If Melo decided to go the same 3-year route as all those other guys did, then it would have been easier for Melo to test the free agency market and literally join Miami in terms of the big 3. But Bosh was pretty much their secondary option, because we have to remember LeBron wanted to exercise his power because he knew that at some point the Cleveland Cavaliers were not serious of building a championship contending team. And I don't care what anyone else says. Look it up. All they had to do in 2010 was trade J.J. Hickson for Amari Stoudemire, and maybe LeBron would have stayed in Cleveland. But that's up for debate. But back to my point on Melo. He signed the deal in Denver and stayed there until he decided to request a trade to the New York Knicks. Once he did that, his career went up exponentially. He made the Knicks relevant again and made New York another hot spot for basketball. But the sad part was that his teams barely even got to the conference finals. You know what I mean? They only had one successful season when they won 55, was it 55, 57 games? I think it was back in 2015. No, actually, no, not 15, 2013, 2014, I believe. I'm not sure. If anyone knows, go ahead and comment it to me. But either way, in spite of all the great individual accomplishments and great scoring that we saw with Melo, the Knicks did him no favors in improving the basketball team. And I felt that his career in New York was pretty much a wash. And there was a perception of Melo that he was pretty much a great scorer and could have been much more if he would have decided to commit himself into other areas of his game to help the team. And I know that many people, including the idiot George Karl, has mentioned this. And one thing about George Karl is an egotistical jackass. He's the kind of coach that never takes accountability for anything. And you saw that a lot throughout his career, and it was always throwing the blame on everyone else, including himself, which includes Melo too. So I just want to get that out there. But it was kind of, sad to see how Melo's career went downhill as soon as he left New York. Through his only stint in Oklahoma City, and then that embarrassing time when he only played 10 games for the Houston Rockets. It felt like, what was the point of even going there? What was the point of even just suiting up to play? As soon as Daryl Morey released him from Houston, he had thoughts of pretty much retirement at that period of time until he was given a second chance with the Portland Trailblazers. And he still showed that he was still the same old Carmelo Anthony. And even a year ago, he accepted a bench role with the Los Angeles Lakers. And he was hoping that those opportunities would get him the long-awaited championship that he was seeking throughout his entire career. Unfortunately, that was not the case, and the Lakers did not win a championship while he was there. So when you look back at Melo's career, you think of it this way: Melo has pretty much accomplished everything that he set out to do, except winning a championship. And overall, he's the one player in NBA history that has scored more career points in the regular season and the playoffs combined without winning a championship. The only player that's ever done that was Karl Malone. So we appreciate and always respected the greatness of Carmelo Anthony and what he brought to basketball. And he still has a good enough support and fan base that still revere him to this day. But unfortunately, many people are gonna look at him in a different way, unlike the other guys in this draft class that have won championships. They might look at him as the next Patrick Ewing, a guy that was a great scorer of his time, you know what I mean, and did everything he could in New York except winning a championship, you know. And unfortunately, guys like John Stockton, Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, Chris Paul, when he retires, unless something changes and when he can finally get himself in a better situation to win a championship, they're all going to be revered in that same category as Melo. Great players, great scorers of their time without winning a championship. And there's no denying that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, that is pretty much as a given thing. And anyone says that he's not a Hall of Famer, I mean, you're smoking something. But there was just a lot on the table that I think he left that was left to be desired. And unfortunately, many people are going to look at him pretty much in a different category. And they may look at him as like one of the great scorers of his time, just like Charles Barkley was, but never won a championship. It's unfair, but that's just the reality of it. Many people judge their careers based on how many championships you won, how much winning you impacted. There's no denying that he impacted, his teams in many different ways. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, the one thing that was missing on his resume is a championship. And and then I think at this point, he's pretty much at peace at what he's done in his basketball career, and he's ready to move on to the next phase of his life. So I wish Melo all the best in terms of what he wants to do with his future. And certainly it'll be interesting to see what he'll say in his Hall of Fame induction. So that's just my 2 cents on Carmelo Anthony's career. Great career, and certainly will go down as one of the great scorers of our generation without winning a championship. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. What do you guys think of Carmelo Anthony's career? And what do you rank him as one of the greats in NBA history? And with that, I'm out. Peace.